Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would actually review a series of videos. I thought that I would review a couple videos. And today, we're actually going to be reviewing that of a different channel. And for those of you that usually see my channel, you know that the channels that I usually review is that either of the LDBC or New Media. Oftentimes because I don't necessarily always disagree with their points, but I think that a lot of their points that they can be a little bit illogical. I think overall that uh, they can be a little bit racially motivated or racially biased. And of course, one of the fighters that they've always kind of went after a little bit has been that of Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez, because Canelo Alvarez, of course, has been one of the more accomplished fighters of the past several years, of the past several 10 years. And don't get me wrong, that's not me stating that every criticism overall that has gone his way has been completely unwarranted. There maybe has been certain fights that maybe he could have took, but there's only so much criticism once again that I can really give to Canelo because he's really shown me that throughout the past 10 plus years that pretty much out of any other fighter, at least overall that's been within his prime years and pretty much been the most active within that of the past 10 plus years, Canelo Alvarez has always shown me that he's going to be willing to fight those A grade level fighters. Now, that's not me stating once again that every fight that needed to happen happened. Demetrius Andrade, of course, didn't happen once upon a time. And of course, right now, this David Benavidez fight is not happening at the current moment in time. But the question is why? Of course, a lot of the LDBC and new media, they're going to be claiming that Canelo is avoiding and ducking that at David Benavidez. And who knows, that could potentially be true. I'm not quite sure. But like I've been stating overall for a very long time, the David Benavidez fight was never meant to happen in May. It was never going to happen in May. But the question is that is Canelo Alvarez potentially going to fight that of David Benavidez of this year, or potentially even that of next May and next year? Personally, in my view, I believe that Canelo is trying to build up the fight, just like Gervonta Tank Davis. If he's going to fight Shakur Stevenson or Devin Haney, that he wants it to marinate a little bit. But the reason why I get on Gervonta Tank Davis's ass so much is because out of his 30-fight career and him being 30 years old this year, he hasn't really fought any legitimate A-grade fighters in his career. At least with Canelo Alvarez, what you can kind of say about him is that, okay, he's given you the Golovkin fight, the Lara fight, the Danny Jacobs fight, the Billy Joe Saunders, the Caleb Plant, the Callum Smith, the Miguel Cotto, the Austin Trouts, all those fighters, even Jermell Charlo. But of course, it is time now to step in the ring with that of David Benavidez. But, this recent negotiations, or these most recent negotiations, they have been very particularly interesting. Not only that, but Canelo Alvarez, apparently it has been reported that more than likely he is fighting that of Jaime Munguia in that of May, which is pretty much something that I predicted. I said that in my view he was either going to fight that of Jermall Charlo or he was going to fight that of Jaime Munguia. I've been telling people this for months, but it is what it is. And in my view, Jaime Munguia actually is probably, if you're not fighting David Benavidez next, is probably the best fight potentially available in terms of marketability and in terms of Canelo, because Jaime Munguia is a Mexican fighter. He's coming off of a good knockout. He's a relatively entertaining fighter. I wouldn't say that he's the greatest fighter around, but I would say that he's a relatively entertaining fighter who, of course, overall has shown a little bit of improvement, at least a little bit over time. He's a very flawed fighter, of course, and I want to say that he's an A-plus level fighter. But if you wanted to debate him as an A-minus level opponent, I could potentially see it. But it is what it is. Anyways, the IBFP is going to talk about these most recent negotiations between that of David Benavidez and Canelo, which apparently fell through. With David Benavidez and his team, apparently they stated that they offered Canelo Alvarez $55 million and that he turned it down. Well, apparently Canelo Alvarez's side said that they sent David Benavidez $5 million, and apparently Canelo's team stated that they actually received no offer from that of David Benavidez's team. But David Benavidez's team did state that they did receive an offer from that of Canelo Alvarez's side. So the question is, whose side basically more adds up? I'm not quite sure. But anyways, let's see what the IBFP has to say. Let's get into it.
Welcome back to the IBFP. Here's your host, Boxing News.
Canelo offers David Benavidez $5 million. Look, let's break it down honestly and objectively as possible. And first, I'd like to give a special shout out to the Boxing Gospel on Twitter. That's my brother. But look, let me break it down. Jose Benavidez Sr. did an interview with Excana Boxing where he admitted that Canelo Alvarez sent them a guaranteed offer of $5 million. He states they accepted the offer and never heard back from Canelo Alvarez, so they proceeded to move on and make a fight with Alexander Vostok. Now that makes no sense, because if you're...
I will say this, and maybe it's just because maybe they possibly didn't hear back from Canelo. I'm not necessarily sure. Maybe overall, Canelo Alvarez was testing them to see how much money they would take. I'm not necessarily sure, but it does seem a little bit weird to me overall that apparently you didn't hear back from Canelo Alvarez at all. And Canelo's team overall is stating that they personally did not receive an offer whatsoever. Now, who knows? That could be Canelo Alvarez's side lying as well. Because it also could seem a little bit weird that, you gave them that you gave them $5 million in the process, but that you did not somewhat receive an offer in return. Perhaps that also could be a lie. That could be looked at as a little bit weird. But it does seem a little bit weird that that afterwards, apparently from not hearing from Canelo Alvarez, they moved on very quickly to someone like an Alexander Vostok. It does seem a little bit weird. But once again, I'm not completely sure overall what happened in the negotiations, but something does seem a little bit weird overall with moving on that fast.
Waiting to hear back from Canelo on a fight you supposedly accepted, why would you turn around and make another fight? It doesn't make any sense. But what really doesn't make any...
It does seem a little bit weird to me as well. Because according to the Benavidez' side as well, they said that Canelo Alvarez disappeared and that they couldn't get a hold of them or anything like that. And it appears that not much of negotiations were tried. So, once again, it almost appears to me like, the Benavidez side that, in terms of offering Canelo Alvarez $55 million, I'm not sure if that was 100% ever true. Maybe it was. I don't know. But something does seem a little bit fishy there. Something does seem a little bit to where maybe they thought that Canelo Alvarez was being a diva. Maybe they thought that that it was not a good offer, and maybe they turned it down. According to their side, according to their story, they accepted it. Maybe they didn't. I'm not really quite so sure about that once again, but something does seem a little bit fishy with this situation.
Sense is their lies, because Alexander Vostok is managed by Eddie Reynoso, Canelo Alvarez's manager. So at the end of...
And if that is the case, I actually did not know that. I did not know that Alexander Vostok, that he is managed by that Eddie Reynoso. And if he is managed by that Eddie Reynoso, then I also would agree with that of the IBFP, that does seem very, very particularly strange. But however, if he is managed by that Eddie Reynoso, which I'll take the IBFP's word for it, because personally I tried to look it up myself and I could not find it. But overall, for one of you guys that can concur or confirm that for me, it'd be very much appreciated. But if that does happen, then potentially that could be overall Eddie Reynoso's team stating that, hey, if you fight this dude Alexander Vostok, overall, have a big fight that overall, maybe we could promote the fight a little bit more, make it even a little bit more marketable, and make the fight bigger for both of us. Perhaps maybe that's the way overall that they're trying to go. I'm not really sure. Or maybe David Benavidez' team, maybe they thought that that it wasn't a good enough offer overall, and maybe they moved on. Or maybe Canelo Alvarez did turn down a $55 million. I'm not sure, but Canelo Alvarez's side said allegedly that they did not receive an offer. What we do know, at least according to the Benavidez guys, is that they did receive an offer.
The day you did hear back, you simply didn't want to fight. That's really what this comes down to. The fight and the offer was on the table, and you passed on it so you could make a fight with Alexander Vostok. And that's what it is. That's an absolute fact. This man has been caught in multitude of lies. Team Benavidez keeps getting caught in lies. Sampson, their promoter, had just got caught in another lie where he said that they offered Canelo $55 million.
And some people might ask the question, well, if Canelo Alvarez didn't receive an offer when it came down to them, why did he recently leave out of the PBC? Well, it's been known for months that Canelo Alvarez was not planning to fight David Benavidez next anyway. So that's been on Canelo Alvarez's radar for a very, very, very long time. Canelo Alvarez has been very upfront with that. He's been upfront overall with that to the fans. He's been upfront overall with that to the PBC. He's been upfront with that with everybody. He never planned to fight David Benavidez in May. If he was going to fight David Benavidez, he said it was going to be in September of this year. All right, he's been telling people that for the longest time. The opponent that he originally wanted from that of the PBC for that in May was that of Jamal Charlo.
which we knew he was talking out of his ass, and Eddie Reynoso had to come out and debunk it and say, we were never offered anything like that by David Benavidez.
And that could be very potentially possible. Now, who knows? Is Eddie Reynoso and Canelo Alvarez decided they potentially lying? Who knows? They very well could be. I don't know. But what I do know is that Canelo Alvarez was never planning to fight David Benavidez in May anyway. And David Benavidez' side, apparently they were offered that $5 million. They moved on very potentially quickly. It didn't seem like they stuck around for the negotiations. Something does seem a little bit fishy with this situation.
Period. So once again, this is just yet another lie. Now we see what's really happening. Team Benavidez is lying about sending offers. They're lying about what they're doing. And the truth is, Canelo Alvarez has already made an offer to them. They refused and made a fight with Alexander Volstik. If anybody's holding up the fight, it's David Benavidez. Because men lie, women lie, but the facts don't lie.
To celebrate Leap Day.
Anyways, that's pretty much about it overall for the first video. But then, of course, in the second half of this video, what we're going to be talking about is Canelo Alvarez with his up-and-coming fight with that Jaime Munguia, which actually I'm somewhat relatively excited for. Of course, I don't think that it's the David Benavidez fight that I would want or everybody else wants. But I do think that it actually is a relatively good fight. But let's go on to that part of the video. Let's see what he has to say. Okay, so this is the part of the video. Not really, I believe, talking about the Jaime Munguia fight. That's really going to be more on my part. But this is going to be a part of the video where it talks about where Canelo Alvarez left out of the PBC after that one fight. It was very clear to me that Canelo Alvarez wanted Jermall Charlo for his next opponent. He's really been stating that for months. He really wanted Jermall Charlo in the first fight. But Jermall Charlo had to turn it down because he had been off for a certain amount of time. And on top of that, he was not really there mentally. And I think that Canelo Alvarez wanted a certain amount of money from the PBC to fight that of Jermall Charlo. And he said, I want this certain amount of guaranteed money. Al Heyman and the PBC, they probably did not think overall that it was going to get that turnout overall for Canelo Alvarez to get that amount of confirmed money. And Canelo said, no problem. You know, that I'm just going to move on to the zone and I'm going to fight Jaime Munguia. And I'm going to fight somewhere where they will pay me. All right? So, peace. I think that's pretty much overall what Canelo Alvarez overall pretty much said. Now, of course, a lot of people are going to get on his case about this. I don't really have a problem with him fighting Jaime Munguia in May, but like I said, he is going to have to eventually get in the ring of David Benavidez. But the question is about the Benavidez side is that did they actually turn down that $5 million over that Canelo Alvarez offered them? Because like I said, something seems a little bit fishy with that situation. Allegedly, Canelo Alvarez offered you guys $5 million. Canelo's side is stating that they did not receive that alleged $55 million offer. I would have to see overall, once again, you know, someone else concurrence that overall that they did actually offer Canelo a $55 million offer. But Canelo's side is stating that they did not receive a $55 million offer. Benavidez' side is saying that they did receive the $5 million offer. And then all of a sudden, Canelo Alvarez disappears and then they move on immediately to Alexander Volstik. So something seems a little bit weird. But, you know, that could have just been that maybe Canelo possibly was not satisfied with the offer, if he was offered one potentially, you know, or maybe, you know, who knows, maybe potentially he did disappear, I don't know, but once again, something seems a little bit weird about that they moved on so fast, and it appears, overall, at least according to their conversation, that it did not appear overall that they were working it out or negotiating it at least that long, but, you know, maybe I'm wrong about that, maybe they were, I'm not quite sure, but anyways, IBFP is going to talk about it, let's tune in.
The PBC is broke, and look, let's break it down honestly and objectively as possible.
And I'm not 100% sure the PBC is broke. At the end of the day, they have a lot of fighters. You know, they have Gervonta Tank Davis, who right now is up there with anybody. You know, probably except Canelo in terms of the face of boxing. You know, you have, you know, a few other fighters there as well that do relatively well. And so I'm not going to necessarily say that the PBC is broke, but what I would say overall is that they probably did not think that Canelo deserved that amount of money for putting on the Jermall Charlo fight. They thought potentially maybe that it was not going to do as big. Maybe potentially is what Canelo said. And Canelo, you know, he had wanted Jermall Charlo pretty much since the beginning of this deal. And, you know, if I had to guess, Canelo Alvarez, you know, he said, listen, I want Jermall Charlo. I wanted him from the start. You could not give Jamal Charlo to me for the first fight, so I took Jamal Charlo. And if you're not going to give me Jamal Charlo now, then I'm not fighting for you, period. And I'll just go over to the zone, happily walk over there where I know I'm going to get paid the amount and, paid potentially even more when it comes down to it. And, well, overall, we can just go our separate ways, and then later on, if you guys decide to give me that money, no problem. That's what I believe overall happened.
And Rick Glaser has been saying for weeks after weeks after weeks that the PBC is broke, they're running out of money, and they don't have the finances to pay Canelo Alvarez. He's come out and stated that he's fully vindicated that Canelo Alvarez is no longer with PBC. They were unable to front the money for the Canelo Alvarez May 4th fight. He's also said last week that PBC did not have the $35 million that Canelo Alvarez is guaranteed to pay him for his fight against Jamal Charlo in May. Now, what's interesting is a lot of people are like, oh, why is Canelo trying to fight Jamal Charlo? Why is he trying to fight Jamal Charlo?
Well, listen, in my view, Jamal Charlo, of course, is not as good as the David Benavidez fight. But like I've already stated, Canelo has been open and honest about this for months upon months. So this really shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. Anybody who's listened knows that Canelo Alvarez has been wanting to fight Jamal Charlo ever since he recently joined the PBC. He wanted to fight him in the first fight. When it came down to it, it didn't happen. So he thought that he was going to be able to fight Jamal Charlo probably within that second fight. So then Canelo overall basically stated that, listen, if I don't get Jamal Charlo, within this next fight, then I'm not fighting for you. Period. It is what it is.
Charlo, according to Mike Coppinger with ESPN, when Canelo signed his contract in June, a 3-fight, $100 million deal with the PBC, Jamal Charlo was guaranteed to fight Canelo in May. Canelo had to fight Jamal Charlo. They have a contract. That's a fight Canelo had to take. And not only did he have to take it in May, Canelo Alvarez was guaranteed $35 million. As you've seen other reports, the PBC did not have the $35 million to pay Canelo Alvarez, according to Rick Glaser. And you've seen what happened. Canelo Alvarez is no longer with the PBC. He's left the PBC. And according to Chava with ESPN, Canelo Alvarez next few fights could be Edgar Berlanga and Jaime Munguia. Those could be his next two fights because the PBC could not pay Canelo.
And Edgar Berlanga definitely is not a fight that anyone was trying to see. Now, Canelo, I understand that he's trying to get paid. But at the end of the day, Edgar Berlanga is not a damn fight that anyone wants to see. That dude right now needs to focus on his career, and I understand overall that they're trying to, set that fight up. But dude, at the end of the day, ain't nobody want to see Edgar Berlanga. The only fight really that Canelo Alvarez that he needs to fight there at his own is going to be that at Jaime Munguia. There's really no other fight overall really to make. And if Canelo Alvarez does good numbers, then I could see him potentially going after a Charlo overall, or that of David Benavidez. But Canelo's going to have to try to make one of those two fights next at the very least, between that of Charlo or David Benavidez. He's going to have to try, because if he immediately just goes after Edgar Berlanga, then Canelo is going to get a certain amount of criticism, and warranted, because there's no reason to fight Edgar Berlanga, because I'm not really even sure how big of a fight that actually is.
A Jake Donovan with boxing scene in the ring, he states he's been told there will be one final meeting today with the PBC and Canelo to determine the future. There's little indication to believe anything will come of it, but it's still a possibility. It shows you that Canelo Alvarez wants to right this ship, wants to finish out his contract, and likely fight David Benavidez and Jamal Charlo to finish out his PBC contract, but we don't know if that's even going to change. At this point, right now, it looks like Canelo Alvarez is done with the PBC since they don't have his money. Now, at the end of the day, a lot of people are going to be looking for blame, who to blame. I don't want to see this fight. I don't want to see this fight. If you're mad at anybody, be mad at the PBC, because they're the ones who can't pay Canelo. Canelo did not choose to fight Edgar Berlanga.
Well, listen, some people overall, like Boxing Eagle or some other guys, they might say, why should they have to pay for Canelo Alvarez that amount of money? Like what DAZN paid him against a Jamal Charlo, when that's not the fight right now that anybody wants to see. Well, I don't think that that's a fight that nobody would want to see. But of course, David Benavidez is the fight that everybody wants to see. The thing is that Canelo Alvarez, that right now he believes, at least from the PBC, at least this is what I'm getting, that he doesn't that he doesn't believe that he's getting paid enough overall from that of the PBC, or overall, for that of a possible Jamal Charlo, or potentially David Benavidez potentially. Because Canelo side has already stated that, for the David Benavidez fight, they know how big that fight is, and that overall that they're going to have to receive a substantial amount of money. And I don't completely disagree with them. Now, once again, there is such a thing as pricing yourself out. So we'll see overall, once again, how the negotiations go. But once again, it's going to be interesting to see what happens after this May fight. But Canelo's going to have to try overall, once again, to either fight Charlo or David Benavidez in that of September. Because if he just goes in there against Edgar Berlanga, that's going to receive a lot of criticism, and very warranted. Because Edgar Berlanga, in my view, I'm not really sure how big of a fight that actually is. The zone's been trying to push it, but Edgar Berlanga is not really that big of an opponent. And I think even the IBFP overall would personally agree with that. I think I've seen a video about that as well. So he's going to have to try overall to go back with the PBC, and work with them again.
Canelo Alvarez did not choose to make these guys not pay him.
But once again, I don't think that Canelo Alvarez signed a 3-fight contract with the PBC just to back out, just to overall make it look, like overall like he was in the good. I think overall that Canelo really did try overall to possibly ride that out, and I think he possibly wanted David Benavidez for that third fight, but he wanted Jamal Charlo in that second fight. Either they had issues getting Jamal Charlo in that, because Jamal Charlo, of course, we don't really know where he's at mentally, or overall they didn't think that Canelo deserved $35 million. That's what I'm getting from the situation. And Canelo said, no problem, I'll just go to the zone and fight Jaime Munguia, and I could even potentially fight Edgar Berlanga, get paid more, and still get somewhat of numbers, because I'm the face of boxing. You need me more than what I need you.
His money? I mean, at the end of the day, we got to be honest and unbiased. Canelo Alvarez is being forced in a situation where these guys will not pay him his money. We got to be honest and unbiased.
Well, he could be in a situation where he's not getting the money that he believes that he's entitled to. And at the end of the day, if Canelo Alvarez was someone like, Teofimo Lopez, then I would kind of get a little bit more criticism. But Canelo Alvarez, with each and every pay-per-view, he's getting at minimum $350,000, if not even sometimes $600,000. His last fight, I believe, did about $600,000 with Jamal Charlo. Which of course some people would say, oh, well, it should have done a little bit better. Well, the reason why it didn't really do any better was, first of all, because of course Jamal was moving up a couple weight classes, even though they're really both middleweights. But when it comes down to it, on top of that, people also know who Jamal Charlo was. Jamal Charlo is not really the creme de la creme.
Decision Canelo makes at this point is not on him.
Well, I don't completely agree with that whatever decision Canelo Alvarez makes is not completely on him. I think that he does have a duty to himself and to that of the boxing fans overall to try and renegotiate with that of the PBC. So I'm not going to necessarily agree completely with that last part. But what I will say is this. I can't blame Canelo Alvarez for what he's doing right now if he believes that he's not getting the money that he's entitled to. Just a few years ago, the PBC gave Canelo Alvarez, I believe, a confirmed $40 million for that Caleb Plant. Now, if I'm wrong about that, someone correct me. But they gave him for that Caleb Plant. Now, to be fair, maybe they just believe that the Jamal Charlo fight is not as big. But Canelo Alvarez, overall, he's saying, listen, I'm fighting Jamal Charlo, who is an undefeated champion, who still is somewhat of a relative undefeated champion. And if you're not going to pay me that amount of money, then no problem. I'll just move on. So I think that that's overall, basically what's happening here. But I could be wrong about it. I could be wrong. I don't know. But, this Jaime Munguia fight, personally, I actually don't think that it's a bad fight. I'll probably talk about it a little bit more. But the Jaime Munguia fight, just to kind of talk about it in the second half, I actually think that it's a very good fight. I'm very interested to see that how this will do on the numbers. Now, do I believe that Jaime Munguia is a very, do I think that he's a very polished opponent? Do I think that he's someone overall that has the highest level of boxing IQ? Do I think that he's a super duper great multi-dimensional fighter? No, I don't. He's pretty much a Mexican brawler. But one thing I do know about Jaime Munguia is that he's probably a bit bigger than Canelo Alvarez. He has a great amount of power. Both of these fighters are Mexican fighters when it comes down to it. And it could potentially do well on the numbers, at least possibly 600,000 to 700,000 pay-per-view buys. I think that there might be a decent amount of people actually excited for this fight, but we'll see overall about it. Once again, I would love to see the David Benavidez fight, but I'm not really sure exactly what happened with those negotiations. And I think that Canelo Alvarez, that, he got the indication that he was going to be able to fight that at Jamal Charlo in the first place. And they tried to get Jamal Charlo back in the ring to fight that at Jose Benavidez. But I don't know overall if Jamal Charlo, if he's even been negotiating with that at Canelo Alvarez. because Jamal Charlo is all over the place right now mentally. We don't really know where he is. And I think that Canelo Alvarez was somewhat promised that Jamal Charlo fight. He hasn't been, receiving it, or they didn't give him the amount of money overall that he wanted, and he moved on. That's what I personally think overall what happened. But we'll see what ends up happening here. We'll see. But anyways, that's pretty much about it overall for right now. The Jaime Munguia fight, I actually am very somewhat entertained by it. Now, once again, do I believe that Jaime is an elite fighter? No, I don't. But he's probably about an A- level brawler. He did have a very good performance in his last fight against that of John Ryder when it came down to it. So it's going to be interesting. And Jaime Munguia probably could very well easily fight at the 168-pound weight division. So it's very interesting. But once again, we'll see where this goes. But Canelo is going to have to try to get back in negotiations with the PBC later on this year. Otherwise, that would tell me that that he did back out of this overall, possibly not to fight that of David Benavidez if he doesn't try to get back in negotiations with them. Because if he fights Jaime Munguia next and then doesn't try to get back in negotiations with them and just tries to fight Edgar Berlanga in September, he's going to get grilled. And somewhat warranted, because there's no reason for that fight to happen. I could see a reason for the Jaime Munguia fight. I could see overall a reason, for that of the Jamal Charlo fight. I do not see a reason for the Edgar Berlanga fight. So Canelo Alvarez is going to have to try and renegotiate with that of the PBC, but we'll see. But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.